Hey folks, Zanzibarzi here with another Mindustry Hex Wars matchup. We're catching just the tail end of the previous game here before the next one starts. This was played a couple of days ago, so I've already changed up a little bit my start. In particular, the Silicon, I use a slightly different version now. See that probably in the next video. But this was a fun match, and I wanted to get something out on YouTube, so thought you guys might enjoy this rather quick battle and give another example of the modern eviction start. This time I'm not doing as many misclicks as my last video, although right there, failed to get the sand into the core. I'll notice that pretty soon. That sand is for the metaglass. And this time I got the daggers running though, on time at least. And yeah, that metaglass and that graphite they're not going to do anything until they've got sand and coal into the core to work them. But I've got a very nice starting position here with plenty of water. I'm using a technique from RZ to put those 3 pneumatic titanium drills with water. All right, I fixed the sand finally. Notice that. Let's juice it with some extra sand because of the delay, and we'll use the sand at some point. Building another steam gen here. This is probably unnecessary so early on. I'm going to run out of silicon really fast. I should have been building the second silicon maker right now, and the thorium though. The thorium's good to grab at this point before I'm out of silicon as well. So pretty happy with the way things are going right now, although now is when I need to build a second silicon maker, and instead I'm making this. We'll see in a moment. I like to water the coal too here. It takes just 1 pump to water 2 mech drills, which is very convenient. For a pneumatic, it would take 3 pumps for 2 of them. So just a little water fact there. It's maybe wasteful, but the water is very cheap at this point. But yeah, like I mentioned, I should have been making that into silicon. Now I'm completely out of silicon, so I'm going to put even more coal down and still not get more silicon. In fact, I go for another steam gen when I'm have no silicon at all, so that's a bad call. I have enough power right now, or at least I should. But now I remembered. So silicon, and the reason I've switched silicon schemes is because I got a shorter one that's a little it's like short and fat instead of long and skinny like this, and so it fits into spaces a little better. I got that from Sire, and I think I will adopt it for the future. So now I've got the silicon. I'm not entirely sure how much coal it needs. That water isn't plugged in. Very inconvenient there. But it's all right. That silicon's going to work at partial efficiency. It's a good thing to micro daggers here. I'm sending them to 3 new hexes, which is quite convenient. I see a lot of people forgetting to do that. So always remember to micro your daggers. We're going to add even more coal to the initial silicon because I see it's getting a little bit less than it could, and there's a big coal patch, so may as well throw that in the core as well. Slightly unnecessary to change those auto titanium belts. They're not actually handling that level of throughput, but it won't hurt either. The titanium is relatively cheap for me. I've got like 500, so not slacking. And that silicon problem is still coming back to haunt me. I'm also rethinking the triple mono strategy that, again, got from RZ because it uses so much silicon. I also messed up that water placement. It's now not going into the cryo. And so the stiff gen's not going to work right when it gets finished. But yeah, now I'm going for silicon, and I'm also considering changing the way I place these silicon to only use the one with the 4 silicon makers and 1 graphite. Another new design I picked up recently that I have been switching to, but I need more silicon than I do graphite at this point. So even though it's slightly less efficient, I'm going to go for the 6 silicon there, and eventually our silicon problems will work themselves out, as we do have some decent production, and it is increasing now. But you can see the diff gen's not working because of the water placement. I think I will fix that in a moment. Yes. So that's fixed. We've got power. Should have pretty solid amounts of power coming in now. Now it's time for air blast of titanium, air blast of thorium, and then maybe another silicon. We're going to add a little bit of air defense. I'm always worried about the flare snipes. We are quite close together. This is when I first sort of look at the map, and I actually think that I win the game right there with that dagger move. We'll see it in a little bit more detail in a moment, but I noticed that I had more daggers than my opponent. Commit to the flames, and here's the air blast of thorium. So slightly late on that, but not too bad because I got the laser drill on thorium so early, and I was a little slow to add my air blasts, which are what use the thorium. But here we go. I'm adding polys. I'm adding Atrax. I like, or maybe mace. I actually didn't catch. We'll see that soon. But yeah, right here. This is the move that I was talking about. I'm able to win the dagger battle with a little bit of micro. I make it so that not all of his daggers are shooting at mine, and then we are winning with numbers. It was like 6 on 5, and then just a little bit of micro. Now that we have the numbers advantage, we're going to win the battles for sure. Probably should have just taken the hex, although I'll do a little bit of harassment. I've got even more daggers streaming in. I should change my waypoint to bring them in. But I love to distract an opponent if you can right here, forcing him to place down all those arcs. Those are running down his copper and lead, which can be kind of in short supply at this point in the match. And forcing him to place down a Lancer, which is going to use up silicon. And our daggers are going to survive. We're going to walk back. His daggers are still streaming into mine, so dying. And that harassment's already setting back, although I wasn't building during the time, so it set me back a little bit. This is why it would be bad for us to be having to fight other people. But we're the only two competing in this match. Let's make sure we get the water into the last graphite. Nope, I missed it. So it's the risk of doing things manually. I didn't get the water into that last multi-press. I think I'll come back and fix it soon, maybe now. No, not right now. All right, we've taken the close hex with the opponent. Again, I think that all but guarantees that definitely we're ahead now. And I'm going to add some flares for some additional harassment. And even more silicon. We're going to stick with the low-tech silicon because I'm going for a fast attack here. My opponent's very close by, and teching up would slow me down compared to producing a bunch of units. The salvo scheme, I'm not convinced it's the greatest thing, but it will certainly work against small numbers of T2, definitely against daggers, should be totally fine. So that's what I got, ran out of power. I think I could add the second diff gen on my second core in order to get some power going instead, a little faster, but that's all right. We had enough resources to finish this one. I'm going to add decide not to. Okay. Yeah. Could have added a second one there. It would be kind of expensive. We're out of graphite too, which is the main problem. We're spending all the graphite on the T2 production at the moment, but it's time for more silicon. I'm worried that that's going to be the primary issue for us because of the fast units, but really the primary issue right now is graphite, although I guess we have enough production of graphite to keep going. I kind of messed up that placement. I didn't even fix it properly there. But that's fine. The silicon makers don't really need every single sand drill. So we'll be okay there. Because I was just attacking with ground units, now the opponent doesn't have any air defense. Okay, force them to make a little air defense, another expense for them. I haven't really had to do the same yet, although I did build those scatters, I guess. I've already switched up that scatter scheme to something that incorporates a shield, a little bit of water, etc. Okay, this is where I should have held those flares in reserve to get the proper snipe on this core, but now the unloader's down, now there's going to be solid defense. That is a bit of an overinvestment in defense, I would say, for that core in particular. Since we've set back the opponent just a little bit behind us, I'm going to send off some daggers to expand. I'll need the space. If I don't finish them off quickly, we're going to have to finish them off in the mid-game, which means now we can invest in Plastanium. I got lucky with some oil here for the Plastanium, and always convenient when you can find that. Pop that right in the core. No defense on that core, very vulnerable to a flare snipe, which would easily be possible for an opponent at, what are we at, 10 minutes, 11 minutes, 12 minutes? I could even get attacked by Zenith at this point, so definitely a little bit behind in terms of the progression, where I should be at in order to beat the best players at the moment. I'm gonna add some coal and sand to the core. We're not really using any sand out of the core except for in the diff gens, so this is a bit more than I really need right now, but we might use it later on. I've been going back and forth between using schemes that pull sand from the core versus ones that have built-in sand, or use a mass driver to put the sand in. Okay, good. I'm putting some defense on this core, so it's not going to get flare sniped. Adding a little bit of phase. I usually do the first phase manually. You can see I'm almost as fast as the polys in terms of throwing it down, but I'm still not as fast as the polys could theoretically build, so it would be better to have a scheme for that. Although my scheme typing skills are kind of slow too, maybe slower than my hotkeys, so I go back and forth on that one as well. Okay, good. We're adding some defense here. That was a very vulnerable core. Could have been easily flare sniped. I'm not sure what to do with these T2. The Mace Rush is pretty powerful, but now that they've got 6 salvos, we're not going to do anything here. We're forcing them to throw down some more arcs. Maybe they're running low on copper. That was quite a few arcs. But basically that was wasted. We're going to have to tech up. That's why, boom, Zeniths. Zeniths will do the job. I'm also rich here. I've got too much economy. I had like 4, almost 5k silicon before throwing this down, so I need to get better at using all my resources. I'm pretty balanced at the moment in terms of resources. I thought graphite was going to be a bigger problem than it was, but we've managed to pile up about 2k of graphite, and no way I can afford this enormous thorium reactor. I think I'm changing the approach on this one as well. I'm not going to... For a couple games this weekend, I was doing this, where I throw down this enormous thorium reactor and then gradually add the Thor reactors until it is properly ready to go. But yeah, I should have built that in the different order. I've already wasted a few hundred silicon and graphite on having those Thor reactors die before it was completely finished. But yeah, I'm going to switch to diff gens for this stage of the game and only build this massive thorium reactor in the late game. I think it's decent there. At maximum, it produces 63k, I think, domed, 63k power, and a similar size diff gen can make almost 40k, so it's not a big difference, and it's way cheaper to build the diff gen, especially if I get megas, which I'm still forgetting megas in this game, but in future games I have been trying to remember that. As soon as it's kind of a reminder when I'm out of titanium, that's when I'm like, oh crap, I should have built megas. But yeah, you can see how expensive the big guy is. Although it is producing enough power now for a while. I should be all set on power. I should have domed everything too. Well, my surge is late, but at high speed, this would be a good time to dome everything. I am going to dome the surge hex first, which is kind of nice, but you can see I'm also out of silicon. I should have spent, I had like 5k silicon a minute ago. Should have spent that on eco. I'm going to do some eco now with this sort of unusual, this is a Zanzi original, little mid-game metaglass silicon graphite production out of the core. This is the sandy core thing that some of the players strongly dislike, but that I'm experimenting with. I think I'll use like some of those early on, and then I will switch to the giant ones that are fed with a mass driver of sand for the late game significant silicon production. See if those zenith are enough. I noticed there was no air defense in my opponent's core, their original core, and that one is always a bit of an unusual. The first core, like how valuable is it? But at this stage of the game, it's still pretty important. It's still producing quite a bit of stuff. I noticed I have a lot of coal and sand in the core, so we're gonna go for the big guy again, or not the big guy, this mid-sized one that I'm talking about. And here I have to delete my defense. That's never a great feeling, deleting stuff like that. It would be much better if I had one that I could build in stages. But switching from the scatter to swarmer does merit deleting most of the time, and I have so many polys. My build speed is incredibly fast already. In fact, it's a little bit wasteful to have this many polys. Okay, I was able to get the snipe on the big core for my opponent, so I am very firmly ahead at this point, and I've been teching up. Yeah, Onyx is right. I do have too many resources. I had too many a few moments ago. I could be affording more T3, or more importantly, more large self-funded T3. And that's an approach that I'm trying to do more nowadays. Yeah, I said 3k silly a second ago. Now I'm already up to 5k, so you can see it's rising very quickly. I do remember megas, I guess, so that's good. My plastanium was not domed, so we're running out of plastanium. I built this massive plastanium. It's a overreaction here. I don't have the titanium to support that much plastanium production, but we're going to go ahead and add it. I think I would need one more air blast to properly feed, just to take care of the needs of that one plastanium maker. But we will go for it. And at this stage, having the thorium reactor feels really good because I can just plop down more thoriacs in here, and I don't have to worry about power again for another couple of minutes, and then I can come back and do the same thing. So that's why I took this approach, but I am thinking the expense is not quite worth it. Okay, the opponent has a lot of ground defenses, or air defenses. It would be very convenient if I had Fortress instead of Zenith at this moment. We'll see if we can snipe this bad boy, though. Yeah, we pop the shield, and I think I mentioned last time, scatters are not terribly impressive against Zenith. And there we go. Opponent it's called the GG. They're basically defeated. Okay, and they are going to leave the match even. So all it took was a couple of Zeniths and some early harassment to prevent my opponent from taking up at the same speed that I was. And while it did stalemate a little bit when I tried to go for the T2 approach, that ended up being a bit of a bust. Because they had enough salvos, I probably could have overwhelmed with a lot of T2. But just moving up to Zenith was plenty. Zenith, they're a workhorse. And yeah, so that's a little look at a early to mid-game battle transition. Let me know what you think, what I can do better. I've been talking about what I think I can do better as well, but I might be wrong. I know last recording I think I said a couple of wrong things. In particular, the interactions between the units and force projectors. I think I said that the electric producing, like shooting units like a Pulsar, Quasar, Vela would be blocked by the shield, but that's the opposite. They cut through shields. The other units are blocked by shields better. So Flare, Zenith, Fortress, Daggers, their hits are absorbed by the shields. So yeah, I talk very confidently in these videos, but I am sometimes, if not frequently, incorrect about some of my information. Yeah. So that's pretty much game. I am going to be cleaning up the remaining spaces. I don't really have any significant opponents, so the next step would be take everything as fast as possible, which I like to do with flares. They're pretty good cleanup. The reason I use flares, even though I'm most likely going to run into air defense, is that they're just so fast. Doming this is ambitious, given I only have 2k silicon, especially if I go for another one, which I often do. I should just make a giant silicon maker. Okay, I'm going to make my little guy. I still have huge amounts of sand and coal in the core. Can add even more. So that this will work. And I do find the sandy core is highly efficient when you're able to air blast the coal in like this. A lot of the independent silly schemes rely on oil extractors, which you may know, it's a lot of infrastructure that you need for oil extractor, because you need the oil extractor, you need the water extractors to feed it, you need sand to go into it, and you need the coal combustors. All of those are taking power, space, and especially power, I guess. So it is more efficient if you can use coal air blasts to feed your silicon production, which I'm usually able to do when I'm building off the core like this. So this game, I do take a very different approach to some other games that I've been trying lately, which I will probably show off in the next video, and then we can debate which approach is better. Probably the other approach that I'm going to take with the massive corner schemes. I've been trying to get into that, which seems to be the modern way. Not necessarily. I said that it was all sandy core, like everyone has to do sandy core. That's not exactly how it goes. I didn't realize until after my last video, basically, that a lot of the late game uses sand that's brought in via mass driver rather than taken from the core. And I think that's pretty smart. You're able to effectively deliver quite a bit of sand, although sometimes you build like 6 air blasts on 2 mass drivers, and that's actually more sand than your production needs. It needs 4 air blasts for 8 silicon smelters rather than 6, which is often a giant scheme that I make. So you can run into some inefficiencies with the mass driver style approach if you're not paying attention to exactly how many air blasts are required. So yeah, Onyx is mentioning this self-eco T3 approach in chat, and that's something that I've been trying out since this game. It's pretty good, although I need to know when to make those giant self T3 eco makers. They can be quite expensive. There's lots of different versions of them. And picking the right one that's not going to bankrupt you, that's going to leave you still with enough power, is important. And a tricky decision to make on when to do it. And that's kind of one of the last things separating the top players from everybody else, because at this point, if you're still playing Mindustry in 2024, you probably have a lot of schemes, and you know how to copy schemes. You can copy the giant schemes from the best players if you'd like. So yeah, here we go. I'm gonna test out some massive. Oh well, first I'm gonna do the thing that I was just talking about with the silicon that's fed with a mass driver. In particular, this one would require, I think, 4 air blasts, and I've been putting 6 on it instead. I'm talking about the weakness that I had just mentioned, where I'm not sure what to go for in the mid-game at this point, and I think that I didn't play perfectly earlier on. Fortunately, my opponent wasn't playing perfectly either. In terms of the fact that I could afford some giant schemes faster. And I think this scheme is one that I got like that morning or the day before. So I don't even know how much sand it uses. And I'm realizing it uses more sand than I thought. But anyway, I still got 5% progress for that game. Very pleased. So that was a quick one versus Kommit versus the Flames. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, follow for more. So thanks.